Chapter 59, Hero of Time. It was finally over. Link never expected to think, let alone say those 4 words. Despite all his desire to stop Ganondorf, he never thought he'd live to see the Gerudo King defeated. So much had changed since he had first heard of him, the Desert Man, an ominous and unknown sorcerer. He was not always evil. Link knew that now. Fate had dealt the man and his people a cruel hand. A part of him wondered if things would have turned out differently if the Sheikah had tried raising Ganondorf as their own, or perhaps that would have provoked a war. Any chances of turning Ganondorf from his eventual fate had been shattered with the deaths of the Gerudo royal family. If any thread of hope had remained for him then, it had been lost when Ganondorf pledged himself to a demon in an effort to save his people. I did what had to be done, Link thought. It was too late for Ganondorf. The boy in that vision inside the Spirit Temple had died long ago, consumed by thoughts of grief and vengeance. If there was any chance for him after that fateful night, the twin Rova sisters had swept it away when they had poisoned his mind. None of these thoughts made Link feel any better. So many had died, leaving the survivors to bear the scar of Hyrule's long and terrible war. Link knew he should have been happy. Ganondorf was defeated, the Triforce was safely back within the Sacred Realm, and Hyrule would know peace for a time. How long would it take to rebuild the 10 Kingdoms? Without Zelda's aid, would the 10 Kingdoms remain unified? Or would they one day forget the trials that had brought them together? One thing was for certain. The process would be long, and Link wasn't sure whether some wounds could be healed with time, despite what he had once been told. Some wounds, it seemed, left marks that neither time nor magic could erase. Link noticed he wasn't the only one lost in thought. Impa stood a short way from him, seemingly unaware of the people moving around her. Rauru was beside her, his hands behind him as he grimly surveyed the ruins. Soldiers, healers, and attendants scurried between broken buildings. Some people who saw Link saluted him or shouted greetings. He acknowledged them with a weary nod, but spoke little as he waited for the other sages. The men who greeted him were members of Toru's battalion. Other folk just stared at him in curiosity, no doubt wondering if this one-eyed youth in a green tunic was truly the hero the soldiers spoke of. The shouts of "Hail the Hero of Time" quickly grew tiresome. Link ignored it as best as he could, just as the sages suggested. Except for Ruto and Darunia, who both thought he was too modest. All around him, stretchers bore the wounded and dead. Survivors were carried to tents erected amidst the ruins, while the fallen were burned with solemn ceremony. The Gorons worked to clear away debris and assisted in putting up more tents. Oily smoke rose from pyres in thick black tendrils, and Link caught the faint whiff of burning flesh. The dead amongst Ganon's army were burned too, thrown into hastily dug pits. Those who had survived amongst the Blin had either thrown down their weapons in surrender or fled the moment they realized the battle was lost. As he stared at the scene of organized chaos, Link heard something behind him. A slow-moving wagon made its way down the rubble-strewn street, approaching from the direction of the tower. A line of Hylian soldiers flanked both its sides, their solemn features barely visible beneath their ash and dirt-smeared helms. Even before it reached him, Link knew what that cart bore. Toru led the procession, not looking like a man who had just led his soldiers to victory. Beneath his helm, Toru's face was grim and tired. It was a wonder he was able to keep himself upright as his horse plodded along the road. Link turned to see if the other sages noticed it as well. Darunia, Ruto, and Nabooru had gone to delegate tasks to their people. Rauru stared at the cart, and Link could have sworn he made a slight gesture, as if to clasp Impa's shoulder. As the wagon drew near, the sages turned from their tasks, all looking utterly exhausted. Saria, who sat in Epina's saddle, kept trying to stifle a yawn. Only a few hours had passed since the defeat of Ganon, and Link knew he still needed to complete Zelda's task. The sages insisted on keeping him at the inn, once certain it was structurally sound. Despite his protests, they commanded him to stay there and rest for a time. To his annoyance, Navi had agreed with them. The sages were capable of healing him, but with their powers already spent, they could do little more than mend his wounded leg. After being steered inside, Link gave his report on everything that had happened, both before Zelda's death and after Ganondorf had flung him into the ruins of Castletown. The sages asked no questions, not even when he spoke of his meeting with Zelda and his discovery that she had a daughter. He didn't reveal what Ganondorf had threatened to do, or that the man knew who Ileana was. Afterwards, they kept their questions brief, and they left him to rest. They probably would have kept him inside longer, except Link couldn't stand being inside that decrepit old building or these ruins. He had wanted to leave right after his task was done. The wagon moved closer, and when Link saw its contents, his breath caught in his throat. Hyrule's princess lay shrouded in her crimson and blue banner, and the sight of it made Link numb. I could have saved her. How? He had been too late. Link knew that Zelda wouldn't want them grieving over her. She'd want them to move on and do what must be done. She had told him that while they were camped in the leafy bowers of a Kokiri grove. The wagon made its way down the broken road, passing between rows of Gorons, Zora, and Hylians, who bowed their heads in solemn respect. A hush fell over those who had gathered by the roadside. Link watched as the cart reached the ruined gatehouse, crossed the bridge, and then meandered out into Hyrule Field. Epona nudged him with her whiskery muzzle, whinnying softly. He scratched her ear in response, pressing his head against her warm neck. Going to sleep where he stood was starting to feel like a good idea. "Are you okay, Link?" Saria asked him. Realizing he had almost dozed off, Link shook himself and then met her worried eyes. "I'll be fine," he answered, forcing himself to smile. "It's just..." His voice caught on the words before he added thickly, "It's not fair that she died." "I know," Saria said, her voice somber. She looked where Impa stood with Rauru, noticing that Ruro had returned and was discussing something. "Do you think Impa will be okay?" Impa stood as still as a statue, her head bowed ever so slightly. Rauru stood beside her, listening to whatever Rudo was saying, too far away for Link to catch his words. "It'll take time," Navi said, landing on Link's shoulder. If anyone could empathize with Impa's loss, Navi could. Having lost her own charge, she now carried the scars of those memories forever. "Besides, if Zelda has a daughter, then Impa will do all she can to protect her." "Do you think the Triforce could bring her back?" he asked quietly, so as not to be overheard by Impa. "I don't know," Navi replied, also keeping her voice low. "Zelda wasn't sure it could. Resurrecting the dead isn't natural, and the Triforce isn't all-powerful. Even the goddesses realized that was too dangerous." The loud crunch of heavy footsteps on stone cut their conversation short. Darunia had returned, along with Noburu. Thinking he should join them, Link tugged at Epina's lead rope. As he reached the others, he caught wind of their conversation.
My people in the other clans are gathering the wounded,
said Darunia, addressing Impa.
Many did not survive the assault on the wall.
Did Gemite make it? Link asked.
No, I'm afraid not.
Darunia bowed his head for a moment, and then added.
My people have suffered. Many were wounded. But we will do what we can to assist.
Thank you, Darunia, Impa replied. Noburu, what have you to report? Most of the Blind fled once they knew the battle was lost. Ganondorf's other combatants chose not to flee, Noburu answered. Should I order my women to pursue the Blind? No, Impa said, tone quiet. There's been enough bloodshed today. They will most likely flee back to their homes. And if they don't? Noburu asked. Shouldn't we issue a decree that any Blind found in Hyrule after a given time be put to the sword? That won't be up to me to decide, Impa replied. But yes, that is what I shall advise. Link almost flinched at the brutality behind those words. He had only been half listening, still dismayed by the news of Gemite's death. He had liked Gemite, even if the Goron was annoying at times. The news didn't hurt him as deep as it once might have. Perhaps he was too numb after so much death. Rudo, what have you to report? Impa asked, dragging Link out of his thoughts to regard the Zora Queen. We have begun clearing the river of the deceased, but it will take a while, Rudo said, keeping her voice even. I did as you asked. My people will help with preparations for Zelda's burial. Thank you, Impa said, sounding as though the very act of breathing was painful. It was the least I could do, Rudo replied sadly. With the royal tomb ransacked during the Kakariko raids, it was decided that Zelda should be buried upon the island at the center of Lake Hylia. For many, the lake represented the heart of life in Hyrule, and as such, it held a special place in the lore of the kingdom's people. When Impa turned to face him, Link knew it was the time to return the Master Sword. There is but one thing left for us to do, she said. Should you choose to, Link. It's what she wanted, Link replied. I said I'd do it. Can't be that hard. All I have to do is touch the Triforce, right? It sounded simple enough, at least until Rauru's next words dashed that assumption.
So far as I know, the Triforce will give you a choice, Rauru explained. It will also ask for something in return.
Such as? Link asked in apprehension.
I cannot say, Rauru said with a sigh. I am sorry, Link. No one has touched it and made a successful wish in living memory.
These things really should come with instructions, Navi whispered. A memory stirred within Link's mind, and for a moment, he could picture Halvard leering at him while they stood within the Shadow Temple's depths. There is a price to pay for borrowing a deity's power. He pushed the memory aside, trying not to let anyone see that something was troubling him. I guess there's no point in delaying, Link said moments later. Shouldn't you rest a little longer? Saria asked. No, Link said, a touch too firmly. It's all right. He tried to offer her a reassuring smile, but a scolding look returned his gesture. Without further ado, Link climbed onto Epina's saddle. Or he tried to. Instead, he fumbled as he attempted to mount and nearly stumbled. Darunia took a step forward to assist him, but succeeded only in making Epina shy away from him, her ears flat. One foot caught in the stirrup, Link nearly went tumbling backwards. Only Saria's quick action in soothing the mare saved him from this embarrassment. Once Link was on Epona, they made their way back through the streets. Not that long ago, Link had run down these same roads, dashing through alleys in a desperate bid to outmaneuver Ganon. Here and there, giant hoofprints and collapsed buildings marked the behemoth's passage. A small entourage, comprising an odd mix of Hylian, Gerudo, Goron, and Zora, followed them. Even though the city had been retaken, the sages were not taking any risks to either him or themselves. Link was certain the others tried speaking to him at least several times, but he was too preoccupied with his thoughts to notice. Exhaustion ebbed every last ounce of strength from him, until he struggled to stay upright in the saddle. Even Saria's casual comment that they would have to build him a very big treehouse failed to lift his spirits. But that only made Link feel worse. He had already decided that he couldn't return to the Kokiri Groves. He might have accepted the fact that he was different from them, but that was not something he could ignore forever. Perhaps Link could travel the woods for a time. Just him and Navi. Navi was talking to him, and he probably wouldn't have noticed, except for her sharp jab against his face. "Ouch! Navi!" he exclaimed. Saria looked around. "What are you two doing?" she asked.
Didn't you hear what I said?
The fairy demanded. "No," Link said. "What is it?"
I asked if you were feeling all right.
"A giant, pig-headed demigod just tried to kill me," he replied sardonically. "Apart from that, I feel fine."
I always knew the man was a pig,
Noboru mused quietly.
He certainly had the appetite of one.
Link was pretty sure she didn't believe that, and was trying to make the two of them feel better. But he didn't dare voice the thought aloud.
Ouch.
That from Navi. She promptly looked at him, and Link realized she didn't believe him. "I just want to be out of these ruins," he answered truthfully.
I'm sure we all do,
Saria said softly.
It feels like the woods before we lifted the curse, even though we aren't the only ones here. At least it's not as cold.
"Yeah, I guess so," Link said wearily. He looked up at the tower, still able to sense the magic that lingered there, like the scent of smoke after a fire.
"We will be out soon enough,"
Darunia said.
"Then I shall give you Goron Fire Ale. You'll sleep well after that, and you'll feel much better."
"No," Link said flatly. "Thank you,"
We already tried that.
Navi told him.
He puked.
Darunia laughed.
"That is most unfortunate."
Ruda mouthed an, "Oh dear," and Darunia snorted loudly.
Well, if you change your mind then.
Darunia started, still grinning. "Believe me, I am not changing my mind," Link interrupted, remaining firm. He shot Navi a "thanks a lot" look.
"If you insist,"
Darunia said with a shrug, his brief mirth quickly fading.
"In that case, we are nearly there."
Darunia gestured towards the Temple of Time, that was now bathed in sunlight. The tall facade rose above the ashes, its gray and almost untarnished stone, a lonely monument to Castletown's memories. Apart from Ganondorf's vandalism of the interior and the broken windows, the building suffered very little damage from the siege. A few people scoured the ruins nearby, but there weren't nearly as many folk here as compared to other parts of town. This section of the city, the most heavily guarded save for the tower, had seen little fighting after the sages escaped from the temple. Link glanced at Noboru, who led the solemn party. Not wanting to push his already weary and no doubt hungry steed, Link hadn't nudged Epona beyond a slow trot. Both Rauru and Naburu looked as though they wanted to say something to Impa, but Link doubted their words could console her. Their journey to the Temple of Time ended soon after, and the sages left their escort outside. The sunlit interior of the temple still retained some of its former majesty, and a lingering magic still ebbed from the ancient stones, an almost musical hymn in the back of Link's mind. If it hadn't been so badly damaged, Link was sure he'd still be breathless with awe. Light streamed through broken windows, revealing faint scorch marks on the ground and places where an axe had gouged through the marble. Dust smeared the once pristine stone columns, and rising ash danced in the air as it was disturbed. The once splendid mosaic decorating the ceiling was tarnished, as were the reliefs along the walls. Sections of it had been blasted with magic, and the marble floor was now pebbled with chipped stone.
I do not think Ganondorf much liked the interior,
Darunia said.
The damage was not this extensive before,
Rauru said quietly.
This was done after our escape.
The corpses of dead Blinn had long since been removed, and the temple kept clear, as per Impa's request. She sent mages ahead to check if Ganondorf laid any traps inside the temple as he did in his tower, but a thorough check hadn't revealed anything. It is well he didn't, Link thought, far too exhausted to even stomach the thought of dealing with more traps. They climbed the steps on both sides of the altar, silently walking through the archway into the Master Sword's chamber. The sages climbed onto the dais, each of them taking a position upon the sigils etched into the stone. Link stepped up to the Master Sword's pedestal and felt the sword's familiar weight as he slid it from his sheath. He glanced at the fissure in the pedestal, as if waiting for him to slide the Master Sword back into place. It almost seemed as though the stone was beckoning to him. Firmly gripping the sword's pommel, Link held it aloft, but did not attempt to place it down. Link wasn't sure if it was apprehension that stayed him, or if it was just reluctance to part with the Master Sword. He knew of Zelda's plan, as did all the sages. By claiming the Triforce, Link could restore Hyrule. Of the finer details, Link was uncertain. Had Zelda intended to remove the Gerudo's curse, or something else entirely? That uncertainty, as well as not knowing what the Triforce would do, sent a sliver of fear through him.
Link,
Rauru said.
If you are uncertain about this, you don't have to do it.
No, it's fine, Link answered, voice wavering. As he recalled his final meeting with Zelda, his mouth went dry. He had promised, and he would not let her down now. Link gazed down at the sword, admiring its sapphire hilt and the blade's faint blue luster. It felt as much a part of him as his own flesh and blood. The pommel felt warm, and oddly there was neither a scratch nor notch tarnishing the blade. It was as smooth, sharp, and as pristine as the day it was forged. A small part of Link hoped the Master Sword would never see another battle, that it would rest in its pedestal forever. He knew that wasn't likely, and that someday a hero would wield it again. He had stood before the pedestal of time on 3 occasions. The first was securing the Triforce, only to have Ganondorf snatch it away from him. The second time was returning to Hyrule to find the realm under Ganondorf's control. He had felt like a puppet jerked by the strings of fate, afraid and seemingly alone. In Ordon, desperate to be rid of the sword and everything it represented, he had almost thrown it into the river. It seemed that fate would not let him give up, and nor had Zelda. Like a moth to a flame, he was drawn to the sword, coming to accept his destiny. The third and final last time was when Zelda and the sages broke the barrier separating Castletown from the rest of Hyrule.
Are you going to put that thing back, dear?
Rudo asked, rudely interrupting his thoughts.
It is a delightful piece of craftsmanship, to be fair, but must you stare at it so long?
Nabooru shot her death glare that left the Zora Queen smiling sheepishly. Link didn't think Nabooru had forgiven Rudo for her incredibly poor taste in humor when he almost fell to his death. It was Saria who got a word in first.
Rudo, don't be mean.
She sounded like she was scolding a child, not the queen of the Zora, and Rudo looked suitably scandalized. Had Link not been so preoccupied, he might have laughed.
I think he has earned a moment, Darunia said. Besides, I am not so eager to return to this place.
What are you complaining about?
Navi asked.
You weren't stuck in it for 7 years.
I do not think that would be the case here,
Rauru said reassuringly.
When you are ready,
Navi said, sounding tense. Link nodded, swallowed thickly, and stepped up to the pedestal. Both hands upon the pommel, he guided the sword back into the stone. As the sword touched the fissure, a consciousness brushed against his mind. Its source was ancient and unlike anything that he recognized. He gasped, almost releasing the sword's pommel.
Don't tell me you cut yourself,
Rudo said with an exasperated tone. Navi was not the only one glaring at her. None of you felt that? Link asked them. It took him a fair amount of practiced effort to ignore Rudo. Navi?
I didn't feel anything,
Navi said. Link looked to Impa for confirmation, but her face was blank. Not wanting to sound foolish in front of everyone, he shook his head. It was nothing. Gripping the pommel tightly again, Link pushed the sword further into the stone until it could go no further. The amber gem pulsed with a golden light, and before Link could react, the world changed around him. The Master Sword in the pedestal vanished. With his hands no longer supporting the Master Sword's hilt, Link stumbled and almost fell. Steadying himself, he surveyed the familiar surroundings of the Temple of Light. The Chamber of Sages held none of the oppressive claustrophobia that Link had noticed during his previous visits. Instead, an object in the room's middle cast a bright and almost blinding aura about the chamber. The essence of the goddesses hovered in the center of the sage's circle, as though held by invisible strings. An instant later, Link felt its beckoning call drawing him closer. It was whispering to him, encouraging him to claim its power. No, Link thought, unsure where that exact thought came from. Not to claim it. To ask a favor. The sages gathered around the Triforce, their eyes completely on him. It was then that Link realized he had stepped towards the Triforce. He didn't recall moving closer to it, and he shuddered, chilled by the thought of the Triforce's influence on him. Rauru. Link tore his eyes away from the Triforce, trying so desperately to ignore its call. Why can't one of you take it?
That could be a bad idea, Darunia jested. I might get hungry.
Nabooru rolled her eyes and exchanged exasperated looks with Saria and Rudo.
All sages are forbidden to use the Triforce, said Rauru. We are its guardians, its keepers, and it is not for us to use. Once long ago, the first sages tried using it, and their attempt did not go well.
What happened? Link asked. The Elder Tree had omitted that detail, and Link wondered if he recalled more than he had led Link to believe.
One of them was tempted by a demon, just as Ganondorf was,
Rauru explained.
All we know is that they betrayed the others. Much of the rest was lost to time. Now go on, Link. Make your wish.
Do you know what will happen? Link asked.
That will depend on what you wish for,
Rauru answered.
I can read your mind well enough if I choose,
Impa furthered. But even I would be hard-pressed to gauge exactly what would happen. What do I wish for? He wondered, staring as best he could at the golden relic. What Link wished for was for those who perished during Ganondorf's reign to have a second chance. There were so many names, and the Great Deku Tree was only the first. The list of deaths directly or indirectly involving him was buried somewhere in the recesses of his mind. Link abandoned all thoughts of it. He understood now what he imagined all healers learned. That despite all his efforts, not everyone could be saved. Zelda wanted to restore Hyrule, Link said, his voice thick as he tried restraining his emotions. She wanted to break the curse on the Gerudo. The same task Ganondorf failed in.
Perhaps,
Impa said.
The Chamber of Sages is unaffected by any alterations to the flow of time. I think, should you choose to return to the past, we would remember.
Returning to the past? Could he really do that and carry on a normal life? Link didn't know what a normal life was, at least not for a Hylian anyway. How could he pick up the threads of his old life after all he had seen and done? Link? Navi asked uncertainly. I'm fine, just... He paused to take a deep breath. Link had promised Zelda he would do this, and he couldn't dishonor that wish now. I said I'd do this. Link stepped forward, apprehension gnawing at him. He knew how frightfully powerful the Triforce was, and a part of him feared being struck down by it. Link was sure the thought was an irrational one. If the Triforce could kill anyone it found unworthy of claiming it, then Ganondorf would have perished long ago. Link tried convincing himself that the shard borne by Ganondorf was only trying to protect its master, and it didn't feel any ill will towards him. As Link stepped closer, the relic's warmth washed over him like a midday sun. He reached out gingerly, his fingers just touching the Triforce of Courage, and instantly, its familiar touch flowed into him. A dazzling light flashed around him. Link cried out in shock, shutting his remaining eye. Upon opening it again, he found himself standing in the midst of a white mist. The mist gradually thinned, white tendrils slipping and melting away to reveal a forest glen bathed in silver moonlight. A giant face was carved into the trunk of the nearest tree. Its girth was far wider than any others of its kind, giving Link little doubt that this was the Great Deku Tree. There was no faint hum of earth magic emanating from its wood, nor did Link expect any. The sound of footsteps behind him caused Link to spin around, instinct making him reach for the sword that was no longer strapped to his back. 3 figures, dressed in elaborate robes, stood at the edge of the glen. They were slightly taller than him. One was dressed in a flowing red robe, another in green, and the third in deep blue. None of them lowered their hoods. He didn't need to see the women's entire faces to sense the power they held.
You have done well, my champion, said the emerald-robed woman. You have become the hero that Hyrule needed, just as I always knew you would.
Furore. Link's heart hammered in his chest, and he felt a compelling urge to kneel. This couldn't be real. Or perhaps it was just a vision.
He does not speak much,
Din, the red-robed figure, observed.
Speak, child. We are not the first of our kind you have seen,
Nehru urged him. Forgive me, my lady. The words tumbled out of Link's mouth before he was quite sure of himself. Ferrare lowered her hood, revealing her beautiful emerald eyes and flowing hair.
Rise, Link Aldemir. You need not bow to us.
He rose, struggling to his feet as Ferrare smiled.
Do you remember when last we met?
She asked. Barely, Link admitted. He had a vague recollection of seeing her, but that memory was now lost amidst countless others. Hastily, he added, Barely, my...
Ferrare will do,
the goddess interjected.
You were just a boy when last we met. We took all that you were, and your childhood was lost.
Her voice was etched with sorrow.
Not all went as we'd hoped, for you began your journey far earlier than we expected. Time's wheel turns, and all that dies is reborn. It seems Ganon understood this cycle too well. He tried to end it by stopping you before you could begin, and turned Ganondorf onto the path that would lead him to become the Demon King.
Link had not expected to hear something like this. Certainly not from one of Hyrule's patron deities. A part of him that had once tried desperately to escape his destiny stirred. Anger long buried inside of him rose, and Link could not restrain it. Why didn't you help us? The words slipped out before he could stop himself. I lost count of the number of times I almost died, and others were not so lucky. Nehru looked surprised. Din frowned, and Ferrare stared at him with calm serenity. Link went on regardless. Do you even care about the number of people who died because of what Ganon did? How many times did you watch parents weep for their slain children? Murdered because Ganon's followers thought they could be me, all because of some Sheikah prophecy. Impa hadn't parted with that knowledge easily, but Link knew now. He knew that the same assassins who had torn his family apart and tried to kill him had not been idle. They would have slaughtered every male Hylian child of Link's age, if Impa's followers hadn't stopped them. Even then, many had died, most of them the apparent victims of a tragic accident or an illness. That knowledge only served to fuel Link's tirade. Or were you standing idle while Ganon destroyed not just Hyrule, but the entire 10 kingdoms? You created the pieces that caused this mess. You set the cycle in motion. Surely you have a duty to that which you made. The words were far bolder than he had intended.
You must understand. We could not help you,
Nehru said with sympathy. And why not? Link demanded with rising ire. You call yourselves gods. You tell me you care. And yet you did nothing. Not even when we begged for your aid. Not even when children, Hylian or otherwise, cried out for mercy. How can you ignore that?
So much anger for one so young,
Din observed, staring at him with a mixture of amusement and surprise. Nehru's lips were a thin line of disapproval. Link knew she didn't like him speaking out of line, but he didn't care. He was beyond caring. You're right. I'm angry, Link said, somehow managing to restrain himself from shouting. You all but admitted to using me. And you used Zelda too. And she paid with her life. You want me to believe you're gods? Then fine. Be gods. Show me I'm wrong.
You have every right to be angry, Link, given what was done to you,
Ferrari said calmly.
If you quell your temper for a moment, I can explain.
Link expected Ferrari to rebuke him for his angry outburst. Din and Nehru looked like they wanted to, but a meaningful glance from Ferrari made them pause. Her calmness took Link by surprise, but the firmness of Ferrari's gaze was proof that she would not tolerate much more of his temper. He pinched his nose and breathed out, trying to make sense of a confusing tangle of emotions.
That's better,
Ferrari said quietly.
It does take courage to question a deity. Certainly with the boldness you have displayed, I will grant you that. Clearly I chose well.
There was a note of pride in her voice. You said you couldn't help us, Link said, lowering his hand and meeting her eyes. Why not?
I once told you of the war waged by my people. The ones you know as the Ancients,
Ferrari explained.
We created a Triforce in a desperate bid to protect both the Sacred Realm and Hyrule. We knew that if we unified our power and left some amongst our number who could use it, we could end that war. It worked, in a fashion. We forged the Triforce, but in the process, we poured so much of our powers into the relic that we lost our true forms.
It took a moment for those words to sink in. A long moment. Link was utterly dumbfounded by the idea that Hyrule's creators were dead. How could they be? Ganon clearly thought they were alive given his ambitions. Link struggled to form words as the shock set in. You're dead? He asked.
Ferrari shook her head. No, we are not dead. There was so much I wanted to tell you when last we met, but there was so little time. You were so young, and I feared you would not understand.
I'm not sure I understand now, Link admitted. How am I able to speak with you now if you're broken?
We can speak to you through the Triforce, if we choose, and when your spirit lingers in the Sacred Realm for a time after death,
Ferrari explained.
The first sages, some of them also ancients, could also speak to us. Unfortunately, one amongst their number was tempted by a demon imprisoned in the Sacred Realm, the same one you fought, and he tried seizing the Triforce for himself. When he realized he could not wield it, he persuaded the people of Hyrule to claim it for themselves. He then corrupted one of the other sages, and the resulting bloodshed resulted in the almost total destruction of their order and the breaking of Ganon's prison. The second sage to fall victim to Ganon saw his error, and despite his repentance, he was cursed with mortality. He preserved himself in the form of a tree and passed on his duty to his descendants.
Link almost gasped, something not unnoticed by Ferrari.
Only a few sages survived that conflict, and together with another of our number, they vowed to seal the Triforce away so that history would not repeat itself.
I don't think they worked that part out well, Link said, almost acidly. He almost regretted being so bold. Stirring Ferrari's wrath did not seem like a good idea.
No,
Ferrari agreed, still maintaining her calm demeanor. If Link's rash temper offended her, she did not show it.
It did not work well. But you did not come here just to seek answers from us, did you? The Triforce can grant you a wish.
Nehru spoke up.
You have gained an understanding of wisdom and power, and you demonstrated your courage through your victory over Ganon and his host. He now lies in a prison within the Sacred Realm, one designed to hold Ganon indefinitely. Be warned, however. After you make your wish, Hyrule will bear the consequences.
What I want... Link paused and swallowed as he struggled to articulate his wish. What I want is for those who lost their lives to be given another chance. That's what Zelda wanted me to do before. His voice faltered for a moment, but he pushed with, before she died. His heart sank as Neighbor's expression grew solemn, and he guessed what her answer would be. The Triforce can't bring back the dead, can it? He asked. Had Ganon known this? Had the demon used Ganondorf's grief as a motive to make him seek out the Triforce? No, that can't have been all of it, Link thought. Ganondorf wanted more than bringing back his family. He wanted revenge.
The Triforce can do many things, but that is beyond its powers.
Link strained to hear Nehru's soft voice as she stated,
The Triforce will seek to grant your wish, and as you hold the key to changing the flow of time, an ocarina that holds the shattered fragments of a time stone, I cannot say for certain what it will do.
What do you mean? Link asked, ire rising. He drew a breath, reining in his temper before continuing. You created it. Surely you, of anyone, should know.
The answer the Triforce gives depends on what is inside your heart, Ferrari said. We are not omniscient as many believe, nor do I think it is right for us to read your thoughts.
A shame, Din muttered, earning a glare from her sister.
Take the relic as our gift to you. For shattered as we are, it is all we can offer you now,
Nehru said. She rose the palm of her hand out, and the others followed suit. A bright flash of light blinded Link. He stepped backward, shielding his eye from the sudden glare that pained his sight. It wasn't long before he realized what it was. The Triforce. The goddesses were still gathered around the relic.
Take it with our blessings, Ferrari said. You have earned it. I could not be more proud of what you have achieved. I'm sure your parents would have been, and I know Zelda was. It has been an honor to call you my own.
Thank you, was all Link could manage as his throat tightened. As he contemplated the Triforce, one last question occurred to him. Ganondorf once claimed, the cycle created long ago could not be broken, that I was bound by the wheel of time to be reborn for eternity. Was he lying? He was not. It was Din who answered. So even if I did destroy Ganon, he might come back again? Link asked. That was why the sages sealed him, to try and make sure that couldn't happen. Can't I wish for the Triforce to break that cycle? Nehru paused, then answered.
I fear that with Din's shard tainted as it is, the Triforce of Power will not grant any wish seeking to harm Ganon.
So he'll just come back? Link asked.
Yes, but that does not mean your efforts were in vain, Nehru replied. What you saw in the Spirit Temple was only one possibility amongst countless others. In this universe, at least, you averted that catastrophe.
Link stepped forward again to claim the Triforce. It beckoned to him, and a strange hunger drew him nearer. The sensation made him shiver. His fingertips barely brushed its golden surface before a surge of warmth rushed through his veins. He gasped and tried to withdraw his hand from the artifact, only to find he couldn't move. In his mind, he saw the golden wolf standing within the great Deku tree's grove. As he reached out to it with his own consciousness, the strange spirit wagged its tail. "We meet again, hero of time," the wolf whispered, its mind now one with his own. "With the Triforce restored, I can grant the wishes of your heart and mind. If your heart is pure, then I will answer. The stronger your wish, the more powerful the Triforce's manifestation of that wish will be." The goddesses said, "You can't bring back the dead," Link thought. "What I want is for those who died to have a second chance. What you ask is not possible." Link felt his hopes deflating at the spirit's words. It must have sensed his dismay, for a moment later it continued. "While it is not possible to raise the dead from the grave, the Triforce can send you back in time to begin again." "But won't that mean Ganon and the others would return? Even Majora?" "Not unless you wish it. But I do not think that is what you desire," the wolf answered. "Is it?" "No," Link answered. "Of course not." The Triforce of Power was tampered with after its creation. The sage who did this is long dead, but his curse remains. Because of that, Ganon cannot be harmed. But the mask he resides in can be sealed away. Ganondorf will be unable to fulfill his plans. By sending you back, those who died will have a second chance. The fabric of reality shall be split in two. Two worlds, existing together, but never interacting with one another. Link was confused by the wolf's bewildering speech. Exhausted as he was, his mind groaned under the onslaught of information. "This isn't making any sense. Speak plainly." The wolf blinked and cocked its head as if considering him. "The Hyrule you know now will still exist, but you will not be a part of it. With the sacred realm sealed off, it will be impossible for you to travel to this world. Is that plain enough for you?" A price. Rauru had warned him this might happen. "What do you mean?" The wolf whined as though explaining itself was painful. "The Triforce can send you back to the childhood that was stolen from you 8 years ago. Only you will know of the events that have transpired. Time will split. You will be sent back to another reality that exists alongside the one you know now. It will be Hyrule, the realm you remember as a child. But save for your companion and the sages, nobody will sing of your deeds. They will not know who you are. Not even Princess Zelda would remember, because she died in your Hyrule. That is the sacrifice you must make." It was a moment before Link could form any coherent thought. The wolf's words left him stunned. His heart sank to his boots, and he wanted to scream at the wolf. He refrained from this, knowing that it would avail him nothing. "And if I refuse?" he wondered. "Then those who have died will be lost forever," the wolf replied. "The choice is yours." Some choice, Link thought. The immensity of what was asked of him took a long time to settle. And when it did, he felt as though the weight of it would crush him. Link thought of refusing, but his reasons were selfish, and he knew it. He wanted to live a normal life, in solitude, with Malon at his side. "What about Navi?" he asked. It seemed an eternity until the wolf responded, and Link was not sure he was ready, nor willing, to hear what it would say. Your companion will remember. But if the lives that Ganon and his servants slew are restored, your companion will be bonded to another. She will not be yours. Doran, Link whispered. Navi's charge, the Kokiri who was mauled by a Wolfos. Though she would deny it vehemently, Link knew Navi would want to see her Kokiri again. Link had a chance to save him, to give Navi back the one she had lost. After all she had done, it was the least he could do. You'll still see her, he thought. He could visit from time to time. Surely that was possible. Twice, Link tried forming thoughts of accepting the sacrifice he knew was required, but faltered. He was going to lose his companion, the one that stayed with him through his darkest days. She'd be happy, though, wouldn't she? Navi would understand. This was what was asked of the hero of time, to give those who had died a second chance. Link drew a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Pondering this decision would not make it any easier. I accept. The wolf nodded and rose upon its haunches. So be it. Just one other thing, Link added. As if exasperated or annoyed, the wolf whined. What? You said this Hyrule will still exist, Link said. Already faint tendrils of mist were coalescing around the tree trunks. He couldn't see the glen's edges anymore. You said my Hyrule would continue to exist, connected only by the sacred realm. So what will happen to it? Can you show me? Glimpses of it, the wolf replied. The wolf shook its golden fur, trotted up to Link, and looked up to him with its one eye. Link stroked its head, and as he did, he felt a sudden jolt as if being grabbed from behind. At once, images began to flash through his mind. Link nearly stumbled as he found himself and the wolf standing beside the bridge across the Zora River. An owl hooted, flying towards a rising moon, its wings soaring towards the rugged brown slopes of Death Mountain. There was a band of wagons beside the road, and people were busily dismantling a small campsite. He felt his heart give a painful jolt when he saw Malin seated on the edge of a nearby log, her hands moving steadily along the strings of a harp. There was a far-off look in her eyes as she stared out across Hyrule's rolling hills, her fingers still gliding across the harp's strings. When Link called out to her, she didn't look up. He tried again, even walking closer, but to his dismay, she seemed to neither hear or even see him. With a sinking feeling in his gut, Link realized that he was a silent spectator, and he could only watch as Malin continued humming an unfamiliar tune. Someone called to her from the camp, and Malin got up, packing her harp in a case and murmuring something to Epona, who stood nearby. Tugging at the horse's reins, she led the mare back towards the partially dismantled camp. The scene changed, and Link blinked in disorientation. Again, he stood beside the wolf. They were in a plaza within the Gerudo fortress. The area was familiar, and it took Link a moment to realize why. It was here that he had escaped from the fortress with Halvard and Sheik. Yet, it was no longer the scene of a bloody uprising between Ganondorf and his people. Gerudo walked by, not noticing the wolf or Hylian standing in their midst. Some paused to stare curiously at a group of Gerudo sparring at the square's center. Link thought he recognized the two women standing near the sparring Gerudo. He strode closer, recognizing Avil and Naburu. They stood watching a group of students twirl and spin with wooden spears. Her eyes were set upon two young boys, whose spears danced in mock combat. Avil's eyes shone with pride, a rare smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Naburu wore a similar expression. Both youths were Gerudo, and Link wondered if they were Avil and Naburu's children. "The curse is broken," the wolf told him, gazing at him as it voiced its thoughts. The next scene took Link back into the heart of Hyrule, far from the sands of the Gerudo's homeland. He was in Kakariko again. Where the charred rubble of broken dwellings had scarred the valley, houses now stood, and he could see the skeletal frame of a partially constructed windmill. Link saw the entrance to the home of Darunia's clan next, where Gorons danced to the beating of drums and drank from huge tankards of ale, while others cheered on a wrestling match, or placed bets on their favorite competitor. As quickly as it came, the image faded, replaced by a scene of 3 Zora guards in their sapphire armor, standing on the shore of the Zora River. Trees clung to the bank, and the woods were alive with a hum of crickets, frogs, and birdsong. The scene changed again, and Link stood on the edge of the great Deku Tree's glade. This time the forest was alive with the festive sounds of music, while Kokiri danced around a fire, or snatched up food from tables. Forens stood with a few Kokiri clustered around the Skull Kid, Vaspin, as he moved his fingers methodically along the length of his flute. Forens will take good care of them, Link thought. He and Saria had always done that. The Deku Tree Sprout watched over the merrymaking, and Link wanted to try reaching out to him, wondering if the spirit would somehow be able to sense him. Far on the edge of the firelight, the elusive dryads watched over the Kokiri, and there seemed to be more than Link had ever seen. Before he could even try and get closer to either them or the Deku Sprout, the vision altered. Link was about to turn to the wolf, still beside him, before he realized where he was. Lake Hylia. Its smooth surface no longer bore a brownish tinge, while the shallows brimmed with water lilies and bird life. What struck Link as different was the absence of the statue that stood upon the island in the lake's center. Only its pedestal remained. Ganondorf must have destroyed it, Link thought. It must have been retribution for the Zora's attempts to reclaim Lake Hylia. Link took in all of this within moments. It was then he became aware of talking to his left and turned. Near the village ruins upon Lake Hylia's shore, a large gathering of Zora, Hylian, and Gerudo stood upon the water's edge. Their eyes were upon the figures standing before a boat that rested in the shallows. It was not small, and its red hull was far more ornate than the crafts on either side of it. "What is this?" Link asked the wolf. "A lament," the wolf replied without looking at him. "You see what is soon to come. A lament for the bearer of wisdom." Link made his way to the gathering of folk. It didn't take him long to recognize the people near the crowd's front. Darunia, as always, was unmistakable. Saria sat perched upon his shoulders, her expression sad and forlorn. He did not need to wonder why, for as he reached Darunia, his heart almost stopped. Impa stood with one hand clasping the edge of the red boat. Its masthead was carved into the likeness of a lion with a white mane, 2 horns protruding from its head, giving it the appearance of a dragon. But it was the boat's contents that swept all warmth from him. There, in seemingly silent and peaceful repose, her eyes closed in eternal sleep, lay Hyrule's fallen queen, Zelda. Her golden hair, flowing like fine silk, was covered with blue and red flower petals. A shawl hid the horrid gash across her throat, and a small golden crown, shaped like leaves, adorned her head. She wore a dress identical to the one she wore on the day she died. Whether someone had washed away the red stains, or it was a new dress. Link was not sure. Zelda's harp also lay tucked beside her. The harpist's song, no more to sing. Link recalled her playing it, sitting beneath the bowers of a kokiri grove. Her hands rested upon a golden sword's hilt, its blade carved with runes. It wasn't until then that Link realized Rauru was speaking.
By the light of the Creators, may you find shelter in the goddess's embrace. May the power of Din grant you strength. May the wisdom of Nehru guide your spirit, and may the courage of Ferrari steady your passage into the realm beyond.
As Rauru spoke, Link recalled the rest of the words Sheik had spoken as they buried Mido. Though the flow of time is cruel, he found himself repeating quietly, and its speed is different for each person. No one can change it. A thing that does not change with time is a memory of our younger days. Sleep now, sweet child. He paused a moment, his eyes meeting those of the sages.
The goddesses decree that the kings and queens of Hyrule must rule fairly and justly, and that they must be a sacrifice to Hyrule, to serve her to their fullest capacity, with both wisdom and courage. Zelda's loyalty was always to Hyrule and to her people, and she fought for this kingdom to the very end. She died for that loyalty. That is how we shall remember her, today and for all of our days.
Rauru's speech ended with a few words Link didn't understand. A blessing, the wolf told him. As Rauru finished, Link could not keep back the tears that came. For a moment, he forgot that only the wolf could see him. Rudo stepped forward, and upon her order, 6 Zora joined the boat, 3 standing on either side. The Zora general Link had seen a day earlier was amongst their number, his characteristic smile all but gone. The Zora queen, in an almost uncharacteristic display of sympathy, placed a hand upon Impa's own. Her words were too soft for Link to hear, but Impa's quiet resolve almost broke as she gave the barest nod before Rudo led her away. The other sages watched with varying degrees of sympathy, but it was the grief within Saria's eyes that tore at Link's soul. Toru was there too, as grim-faced as Link had ever seen. He also noticed a tall man wearing the emblem of Mithra upon his jerkin. His golden crown marked him as royalty, and Link was certain this was, or had been, Zelda's betrothed. A woman, possibly an attendant, stood next to him, cradling a small child in her arms. A little girl, with a faint tuft of blonde hair and deep blue eyes. From the moment he stared into the child's eyes, Link knew this was Zelda's daughter, Ileana. She squirmed in protest as the attendant carried her over to Impa and carefully placed her in the Sheikah's arms.
Zelda would have made a fine queen, Rauru mumbled to the other sages.
Rudo nodded in agreement, echoing,
"She would have."
"Do not let your heart grieve, for she will return," the wolf observed, adding its own words to Rauru's own. "For she is the once and future princess of Hyrule, her name and deeds forever etched into legend." Still watching the solemn procession, Link barely registered the wolf's words. At Rudo's next orders, The 6 Zora guards waded into the river's shallows, bearing Zelda's body away from the shore, guiding it out into the lake. As the vessel slid away, mourners presented small baskets adorned with flowers, candles burning within their centers. These were dipped gently into the water with murmured prayers. The little offerings bobbed up and down upon the tiny waves, their candle flames dancing like little sprites upon the water's surface. Just as the first stars blossomed into the darkening sky, the boat was led towards the island within the lake's center. As the red boat glided away from the shore, the day sighed its final breath, and the lake's surface turned to silver gray. Link looked down as the wolf's muzzle brushed against his leg. Realizing what was about to happen, he nodded. The vision changed once again. Now Link stood on Lake Hylia's center island. Some time had passed since Zelda's funeral. Snow dusted the tall mountain peaks, and winter lay heavy on the land. Where the ruined village once stood, lights now flickered upon the shore, and the village had swelled in size. A bridge now spanned the water, stretching to the island at Lake Hylia's heart, where a tall statue dominated the landscape. It was carved in Zelda's likeness, presiding over a tomb that Link knew was her own. Upon the grave's white marble surface, beneath the ancient Sheikah script, were the notes of Zelda's lullaby and a tiny carving of a harp. "It is time," the wolf said. Not for the first instance, Link had almost forgotten the creature was beside him. Ferrare, or her sisters, will speak to the sages as they have to you, and they will no doubt make sure your Hylian friend is well taken care of. For you, however, it is time to go back. To begin again. Go where? Link asked, even though he already knew the answer. Home.
He was falling. With a gasp, Link opened his eye and threw his hands in front of him as he smacked into the stone dais beside the Master Sword. Cursing his innate clumsiness, he used the pedestal to push himself to his feet. That was when he noticed something very peculiar. Everything seemed bigger. Everything, except him. Link's eye widened in shock as he looked down at himself. As he brought his small hands up to his face, Link felt an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. He could just make out his reflection upon the Master Sword's steel blade. An eye was still missing, and scars marred his flesh from dozens of cuts and burns. He wondered why he still bore those scars. Was that part of his bargain with the Triforce? That Link would bear the scars that made him what he was? His thoughts quickly turned to the sages and Navi. Only the empty chamber and the cold stone walls greeted him. "Navi?" His small and lonely voice echoed off the walls. When Navi didn't answer, Link felt numb. "Saria. Darunia." His voice choked as he went on. Link gazed around, hoping to spot Navi's blue azure glow. "I sent her back to the forest," he remembered. "I sent her back without even saying goodbye." He swallowed the lump rising in his throat, his eye prickling with unshed tears. The Triforce hadn't given him time to tell the sages his plans, nor the opportunity to say goodbye to Malon. Saria would never build that treehouse with him as she wanted, nor would he ever build that little fortress in the woods. He'd left them, all of them, without a single word. "I'm sorry," he thought. He hoped they would understand. This was the sacrifice the Triforce demanded. Tears cascaded down Link's cheek as the full weight of his decision came crashing home. Desperately, he tried not to weep and be strong, but he couldn't help it. Link knew he could still see Navi and wondered if she would look for him. Deep inside, he knew she couldn't. She was bonded to Doran now, and that meant she couldn't stray far from him. He wiped the damp tracks on the sleeves of his soiled green tunic. It was still smeared in ash and smelt of smoke and decay. Link's efforts left dirty smudges across his face. A quick glance around the Temple of Time's inner sanctum affirmed what he had already guessed. Sunlight streamed through the now unbroken windows, rising towards the domed ceiling. The ash and debris tarnishing the pristine marble were gone, as was the rubble strewn across the main hallway. He gave one final long glance at the Master Sword. Taking a deep breath, Link turned away. Perhaps, he hoped, he wouldn't ever have to take a life with it again. "I guess this is goodbye then," Link told the sword, feeling a touch daft for talking to the object. Its azure hilt and amber gem were dull now, as apparently lifeless as the stones around him. "I never really did apologize for throwing you in the river, did I?" He felt a touch of gratitude, knowing that the apparently sentient sword had never given up on him despite all it had witnessed. Link turned, almost hoping he'd feel that strange presence from the sword again, but instead there was nothing. Where was he even going? He felt foreign in this child's body, and nearly tripping down the stairs leading past the altar was proof of that. The light streaming into the temple hurt his eye, and he almost squinted, moving towards the enormous double doors. Behind him, the door of time slid shut with a deep rumble, sealing the Master Sword away. Link reached into his pockets to find the ocarina, but it too was gone. With a deep breath, he kept walking toward the doors. Each step closer brought him to the realization he was leaving behind everything he'd known for a second time. He couldn't stay in the woods. He wasn't a Kokiri. Link's first thought of residency was Lon Lon Ranch, but he wasn't sure how events had played out in this timeline. Would Malon even know him, or accept someone as disfigured as he was? Link found himself trembling as he placed a hand against one of the doors. He wasn't sure whether or not it was because he didn't think he was ready to face what lay outside. Link barely managed to contain himself, and then with one last deep breath, he pushed the door open. Warm, brilliant sunlight washed over him as Castletown greeted the dawn of a new day. It was, Link thought, a new beginning.